You're listening to People and Profit, the podcast that focuses on elevating humanity through business, sponsored by Conscious Capitalism, Arizona. And now, let's hear from our hosts, Jeremy and Sarah.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the People and Profit podcast, brought to you by Conscious Capitalism, Arizona. I am Jeremy Neis, your host today, and I am super excited to be talking today with Jonathan Cottrell and how he is elevating humanity through business with his organization Journeyage and many others. You're going to learn more about that. Before we introduce Jonathan further, I want to dive into a little bit about what conscious capitalism is, if this is your first time encountering us. Free enterprise capitalism has served to lift more people out of poverty than any other socioeconomic system ever conceived, empowering social cooperation, human progress, and elevating humanity. Good business is the answer to many of the global issues humankind is facing, and that is what we explore on this show. Conscious capitalism is a global movement with over 50 chapters across the world. That is on a mission to recapture the truth that good business is about doing good for all stakeholders, creating a higher purpose for your organization that can benefit everyone. Our Arizona chapter is focused on highlighting the amazing businesses and leaders in our state who are pursuing these higher purposes and creating value for their stakeholders. If you want to find out more about the organization of Conscious Capitalism operating here in Arizona, please visit ccarizona.org. Okay, with that out of the way, let us bring in then Jonathan, please. Hello, and thank you for joining us, Jonathan.
Hey, happy to be here, Jeremy. Thanks so much for having me.
The pleasure is on this side of the video cast, my friend. And let me start with reading a little bit about you, and then we'll certainly dig into your story. and you certainly make this convenient with simple words that have deep meanings. So Jonathan identifies as a Jesus follower, a family man, a people lover, a serial starter, a community builder, a tent maker, a Phoenix dweller, a film nerd, an iced Americano addict, and a cranial nudist. Those are all fantastic. And I'm going to pick the first one of cranial nudist, which I will be honest, as a member of the cranial nudist tribe, I should have picked up sooner that was a physical thing. And what I went to first was, I really like that. He a cranial nudist. What's on his mind? He wears his heart on his sleeve, and he's not afraid to be judged for where he's at. So I really like both connotations, but definitely a shout out for those of us that are just follically less dense than the others.
Yeah, that's right. Bald is not a four-letter word. I'm all about it. And I had actually the year after I had shaved my head for the very first time, like 10 years ago. My wife had come home with a cool haircut. I was like, man, I got to do something. I went in, I picked it. And then a year later in the Wall Street Journal, there was this whole article about how like bald was powerful and you're seen as stronger, taller, more handsome. And I was like, okay, well, I guess that worked out for me. So yeah, we should start a movement.
Sold. Yeah. Perfecto. Let me share a little bit more, Jonathan, kind of the 30,000 foot things that are you, and then we'll kind of dig in a little bit further. We mentioned that you are the chief executive at Journeyage, and I like your title, Chief Executive Wayfinder. We'll dig into that in just a second, but just real quick, so everybody understands, Journeyage believes that one size training does not fit all. So they've created a B2B platform that helps growing remote teams save up to 80% onboarding employees through personalized training at scale. So I guess I want to hear where you would like to jump in on your story. Obviously, sort of things are culminating with Wayfinder. As a Wayfinder with Journeyage, but also, you've been entrepreneurial since, 11 years old is your number, but I'll say that's a chicken in the coop, but just a spring hatch chicken running around. So do we start at the beginning and share kind of your journey to it? Or would you like to kind of tell us how you arrived, and then we'll work in the back as we go?
Well, I like to think that I've never arrived anywhere. I mean, there's always a horizon to be pursuing. There's, it's no destination to be reached. So I think that. I'm living, I'm learning each and every day. And so, yeah, I've been doing that, at least in the entrepreneurial sense, since I was 11. As you had mentioned, I identify more with the term serial starter, because it's not necessarily just about businesses, but it could be anything, right? Groups, events, other movements, but really just cultivating community-led efforts. And sometimes that takes on the form of business, but ultimately, that is really just creating something from nothing. And that could be in a large enterprise. It could be something that doesn't exist yet. And so that's really been my journey, and I love doing that. So yeah, as a community builder and as a serial starter, those are really core to who I am and what I do each and every day.
I love that. Do you have any sense on where that comes from? How you kind of got that itch so early?
Well, this is a fascinating thing. I was actually talking about this with someone just the other day. Americans, just in general, there was a report. I don't have the figure or source in front of me, but I remember reading this, talking about why is it that a lot of Americans in particular have more of an appetite for risk. And ultimately, if you think like genetically, where have we come from, right? Well, ultimately, a lot of everyone that's arrived here in some way, shape, or form migrated here. They got on a boat, they went across the ocean, they came here. And so obviously not all of the case. I have 5% Native American in me as well. But I think if I look at my heritage, I know that I'm largely, British and Scottish and a little bit of Irish. So as a result of that, there's, I think, a lot of people just within America as a whole identify with this idea of like taking risks, doing something. But I think the idea of serial starting, for me at least, that idea you just can't get away from. I like to think that everyone falls somewhere in what I call the creation cycle. Maybe you're a starter, a scaler, or a sustainer. And there's nothing wrong with either one of those areas. For me, though, especially in those first 3 to 4 years of something being birthed, that's where I find my real specialty and niche.
Fantastic. Did you have role models that helped seed that for you, or you just had that confidence and that inner drive and never thought twice about it?
Well, the reason I say when I was 11, I started something. My grandmother, actually, at the time, she had got me a book. She had heard a young entrepreneur on the radio, and his name is Daryl Bernstein, and he wrote a book called Better Than a Lemonade Stand, 51 Business Ideas for Kids. And so my grandma heard that, bought me the book. I just tore through it, and I started doing all these neighborhood business ideas, whatever I could get my hands on. But obviously that evolved, and that skill set, just as starting something, is something that grows, right? It grows with practice, and it doesn't have to be that you're starting a business. I mean, we all have something that we're starting, right? Starting a hobby, or starting to organize your house, or starting parenting. There's always something to be started. So I think the more that we work on that, the more we get to apply it in our life, and I really enjoy that.
That's fantastic. So how does that lead into the problems that you're addressing with Journeyage? Can you kind of walk us how that particular seed got sown and how that became one of the fires that you're starting to rage up?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, Journeyage, I think first and foremost, I would say, and I know it's something that you're passionate about, and conscious capitalism has lent a strong voice to, as well, as this idea of cultivating healthy cultures. And so the way we put that is that our cause is to co-create the world's most transformative workplace experiences. And so we're doing that. We're starting with training. We see that as a huge pain point for a lot of organizations, especially in this post-pandemic. We didn't know that was going to be happening only a couple years after we started. But obviously there's more focus and effort there than many times before, because people are looking for, how do we do this? How do we make people feel like they belong when they're working from their dining room table or from a coffee house or whatever else it might be? But so much of this remote and hybrid workplace environment really requires a better experience for the employee. And so we're starting there. And what we're looking to do first and foremost at Journeyage is, I think the product, the market that we're serving, all of that is really a secondary thing to the primary thing. And the primary thing, as a chief executive wayfinder and looking to find a way, as you mentioned, is helping cultivate a healthy and transformative culture for our own team, and then applying those lessons to how we can help other clients as well.
Makes perfect sense. So can you give some examples of some of the organizations, the types of organizations that are jumping into the fray with you?
Absolutely. Yeah. We're really proud to serve companies like GoDaddy, helping them actually help a lot of entrepreneurs in their social driven efforts there. We're helping organizations that are franchises, onboarding a lot of people. I mean, you imagine, working in a franchise. I don't know about you if you were a teenager flipping burgers or serving coffee or whatever else it might have been, but you can kind of feel like a cog in a machine there. So that's a great use case and a great opportunity. We're also proud to serve some other organizations like the Arizona Small Business Association, BBB, some others that are really helping a lot of other small business entrepreneurs out there through training them and leveling up their own skills and how they're going about doing whatever it is that their particular business is doing. So it's been fun. We're still a young company and we're still definitely a startup, but really proud to see how far our team has taken that already. And we've gotten to serve some exciting organizations.
That's cool. And I know you'll be too modest to share, so I'll do it. Another one of the organizations that is gloriously enjoying the Journeyage platform is Conscious Capitalism. Journeyage is a sponsor and has been so generous with your technology and your professional services to help us help our community and scale everything that we're about. So thank you for that, and thanks for bringing what you have to market. This is an easy one for me to answer firsthand, again, because with that disclaimer, I'm behind the curtain, if you will, using the very technology that you're bringing to market. But I would imagine most listeners on here would say training platforms, there's many of them out there. There's lots of options. Yes. And so I agree with your identification of the challenge in the marketplace, that we're sort of fragmented, and especially with sort of the evolving work culture that we're seeing right now, that any new entrants and fresh ideas on how we stay connected and keep moving our humanity is important. Is that part of your secret sauce, or what is it that you point to that says, here's what you're going to experience that's different with us as opposed to the other training platforms?
Well, like anything as a product, obviously that too is a journey, but one of the core areas we saw that problem, and you mentioned our belief that one size training doesn't fit all. And, that's easy to say, much harder to then implement into practice. And so there are other technologies out there that you've seen, that focus on this idea of personalization. Ad tech in particular was one market that really did this in the advertising realm and started to get more into this specialty, but we hadn't really seen that brought to bear in the LMS, learning management software and training market. We felt as effectively as it could be. So that's really what we're trying to do. And if you think about, a lot of the training within enterprises, especially if you've, for those that have gone through the traditional kind of compliance trainings, all these horrible trainings that you have to do, where you're sitting in a cubicle,
the drool cup underneath your chin while you're napping. Yes, I'm familiar
exactly
with those videos.
Right. So, we just felt that it could be better. And beyond that, like, even if 80% of the training within these enterprises is really the same, talking about the culture and the types of jobs and responsibilities that are out there, and the compliance and security, all these other things, that there's still a realm and an opportunity to personalize that even at scale, so that, hey, if for example, someone is in a particular role or department or location, or, let's take it even a little step further. If you're a sales team and that certain types of personality traits, let's say you take a DISC profile, well, how is it that you actually deliver that training in a way that's unique based upon that person's skill sets, personality traits, so on and so forth? If you're doing diversity, equity, and inclusion training, if you are someone that's underrepresented versus someone that's overrepresented in the population and has ultimately had a lot more privilege in your life, well, how is it that you're conveying that training to them versus other groups of people? So that's what we're doing at scale. We're really excited about it, and we have hundreds of attributes that you can infuse in, but also you can change out the content to particular groups, departments, whatever it might be, based upon your own organization structure.
Outstanding. So were you on this mission of helping onboarding in these training practices prior to the pandemic, or was that part of the spark? Was it the kerosene?
That's a great question. Yeah. Well, I think, we hadn't necessarily, as any startup, right? You're kind of trying to identify, hey, what are those target markets? So we're learning through that process. We had a lot of hypotheses that we were testing out. And I would say that that's something that evolved and honed the focus. It's not something that we began just saying, this is the only thing. And there's a lot of applications for personalized training. I mean, you could go any number of directions. And frankly, we have had, successes with a lot of different types of use cases. But ultimately, what we're seeing is that that's where the real market need is. And also, that's where expansion need is within our own customer base, right? Starting with that employee onboarding, it's a really great starting point. We're all about walking before we're running. And then we can start to expand and engage further to really improve the employee experience over time. So I would say also for our own selves, we're trying to do this right for ourselves and for our own team members. And again, starting and really walking out our talk and doing that internally. So we're big users of the platform for our own purposes, and we're trying to ever expand those opportunities for us to use it so that we can learn and apply those learnings to our customers. Okay.
So it feels like if I were walking the halls of your office, and ironically I am, I would imagine that there's sort of two concentrations of dialogue and activity. The first would be the technology itself and making sure that it can deliver on these personalizations that you're speaking to. But it seems like more is the human element in your teammates being able to go out there and help organizations start to think in that tailored fashion, because we can make fun of those training videos, but at least you can confidently say, I checked that box. All of that mandatory content was delivered and we can rest easy. Now, whether it was absorbed or not, I don't have to worry about that. I put on the video that has the content. And so you're approaching this problem from a completely different perspective. Is that anywhere near close to what happens? And are those some of the ingredients that you're looking at, or how would you frame your go-to-market with that?
Oh, great question. Well, I think we really do consider ourselves a partner of anyone that we're coming alongside. It's a big deal for us for a lot of reasons. I would say, obviously, early on as a startup, you're trying to find that right fit from a customer perspective. So the more you're in touch and in real face-to-face contact with your customers, the more opportunity you have to really learn about the needs, see those opportunities to solve additional problems, and just serve them in that process. And for us, I mentioned, our cause, our purpose is to love and learn. And so even though our mission is to deliver irreplaceable training, on a daily basis, we're just here to really love our customers well, love our employees. There's this huge opportunity to love well and then learn in the process. So I think, yes, at the end of the day, the human element is, in my opinion, the only element. Technology is really just another opportunity to help people. It's not an end in and of itself. So at the end of the day, that's what we're here to do. We're here to serve, we're here to be partners, and we love doing it.
That's great. Jonathan, again, back to my stalker mode. I've listened to some of your presentations, and I know that culture is a big topic for you, both in how it manifests at Journeyage and your other enterprises and endeavors, but also in helping serve that to the clients that you're bringing to bear. How do you attract people? Is it just being the authentic you? And this is what we're about. You talk about love and learn. That's not on a lot of people's mission plaques. So yeah. How does culture fit into everything you do? Is it a conscious thing? Is it just a byproduct of who you are as a human being and those you attract? Have you done any soul searching on that?
Oh, gosh. Wow. There's a lot there. There's a lot in that question. Well, I think as a founder, and as any founder will say, obviously there's a lot that gets birthed out of that DNA of who you are, but it's also the DNA of who you bring into that mix. But really then the question is not just, what are you going to do? I think the most important questions are not even just the why. Simon Sinek talks about starting with why. I believe starting with who is actually the most important. So our own identities, that personality, and who it is that we've been made to be. Again, I can't get away from being a community builder or a serial starter. And those are things that doesn't matter to the end of my days. That's going to be core to who I am. There are even, some other aspects from a spiritual sense, another sense that I really carry into that every day. But I think also the team members that we've brought in obviously are bringing in their own DNA, their own contributions. And that's the beautiful thing about a startup. And I would say for us, culture is really key. And there's a book I love. Culture Code is huge to that. And one of the things we did from day one is we started what we call the Journeyage passport. And I have it here in my hand. We also have digital versions of this in a remote environment. But as everyone comes on, this encompasses our purpose, our values, our priorities as an organization, so that everyone has it on hand. And then everyone is given a unique stamp that is their own icon, their own colors, and so on and so forth. And when you see someone else living out that passport, then we stamp and we acknowledge and we recognize that culture being lived out. So that's a huge aspect for us. It's the embodiment of who we are.
Great. That's such a useful tool to sort of bring it living and breathing into the daily operations by having that passport. Anybody can stamp those peer to peer, or is it, the quote unquote, the boss caught you and gets you an attaboy?
Oh no, definitely. We want to have a culture of recognition, and that is happening all the time. So I would say, in the beginning, you're kind of getting that started as leaders. You're trying to model that, but stamps are flying all directions, peer to peer, direct report to manager to direct report. It doesn't matter.
That's great. I'm sure that helps a lot.
Yeah, we see it as an alignment tool, right? And alignment is key in creating that health in an organization. So thanks for asking. I do love that. And for me, at the end of the day, again, we're building a culture. The product, the market, the customers, all that, they're byproducts of the culture we're building.
Makes sense. You referenced the book Culture Code, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
What are some of the salient things that leap out of that book that you put into practice?
Well, there are three things that it talks about. It's a book by Daniel Coyle, and he talks about kind of three core things. One, building safety. Two, sharing vulnerability. And three, establishing purpose. So I think there's a lot that goes into all of that. It's a great book, and since I do know that you're floating around, you'll have to make sure and grab one on your way out. It's a gift that we bring to our customers, our partners, our friends, people that are just coming by, because it's so important to us. And we think that the more that not only Journeyage, but our just companies around Arizona, and I know you care about this as Conscious Capitalism Arizona, that the more that companies are focused on these types of aspects of their business, the healthier the organization and the healthier our communities at the end of the day. So it's a big deal to us.
That's a great idea to share that knowledge with people. I appreciate that. Another question related to Journeyage. If you could help me understand, you talked about it's perfect for onboarding and getting people together and personalizing that. And then you mentioned earlier too, the starters, the scalers, the sustainers.
Yeah.
Does the technology kind of lead to that? Is that part of the inherent grooves in the fabric, or how do companies leverage that and make sure that it makes sense for them, and how do they scale with that?
Oh, that's interesting. We hadn't really aligned that to the customer. That's a great point. I think I just view that in my experience, both in enterprises as well as startups. And that's been something that's interesting, right? It doesn't matter, again, if you're in a larger organization, but even in those larger organizations where I've been, one of among thousands of employees, well, even in those contexts, I've always been the person that's on new projects, starting things from scratch, launching new product lines. And so that starting piece of my DNA, I couldn't get away from it, even in those places that I was still birthing something from nothing. And that's where I really liked to be. And so there's no hard science to this. This is kind of just my own language around it. But I'd say, in those first few years, you're probably, if you're a starter, you're really oriented to ideas, creating something from nothing. It doesn't mean that you had to be the person with the idea, but you might even be someone that's helping operationalize that and get it out to market. And then I would say the scalers are the people that have taken that. There's some good traction, but now it needs to go to the next level, right? And that might be taking something from 2 million to, scaling up to 100 million. It might be that you're the 2 to 10 million guy and someone else is 10 million to 100 million person. So it doesn't matter where you fall. And then the sustainers are the people that, hey, it's required. There are huge organizations out there that require that continuation, but you're only seeing that small incremental growth over time. So I think it's just fascinating. I've seen a lot of people that are very good at particular skill sets, but they haven't found where they fall to apply that skill set. So maybe you're a great operational person, but you're just at the wrong stage of the business, and you just need to be at a different stage.
Mm-hmm. No, I really like those separations. I haven't looked at it that way, but that immediately aligns for me on the travels that I've had. So I like that.
Where would you say you fall for yourself?
I would say I'm a scaler. I like when sort of the, I'm happy to pollute the whiteboard, as it were, with ideas, but usually when they're seated on, we've got a good kernel, and how do we take that and make it something more mighty? So that's where I tend to fall in.
I love it.
But I can see from an education perspective how being aware of who's on the other side of the table from you within those lanes, if you will, you would talk to them differently because they're motivated differently and they just show up differently every day.
That's a great point. Yeah, and again, I think it goes back to the who, right? Who is the person that's going to do that within your own team, within the community, and so just finding that key fit for yourself. I think a lot of people don't really know themselves, right? Or do the work that's necessary to continue to know themselves so that they can not just focus on themselves, right? It's knowing yourself so that you know how you can serve others. It's not about putting yourself first, but it's knowing yourself so that you can put others first.
Absolutely. Yep. The flow zone. Try and land there.
I like that. That's good.
Another word of your descriptors that we haven't gotten to is Tentmaker. And I like that one. Again, conscious capitalism kind of calls itself a big tent, and underneath it is anybody that, we had all kinds of walks of businesses and people's backgrounds and, individual proclivities and interests. But at the end of the day, we're all here to get together and say, hey, business is where society moves, and it's a place where we can have great impact. And so if anybody can sign off on that, then, we welcome you under the tent. What is your version of tent making? How do you identify with that?
Yeah, I like that. Well, for me, there's being someone who follows Jesus. There's in the Bible, there's Apostle Paul. He talks a lot about being a tent maker. And so, he was going about doing ministry, serving others while not necessarily always being paid or supported. And if you look out in the world today, obviously there's a lot of do-gooders that are, whether they're nonprofits or particular religious bents, whatever it might be. And there has to be some type of way to sustain that activity, that work that they're doing, right? But for some, perhaps they're relying on donations, perhaps they're relying upon, volunteer hours, it might be. But then at least for me, I just really want to focus on always putting others first, that there's never any money associated with that any type of ministry activity or serving others, that I'm not doing that for my own gain, but it's really just truly altruistic in that sense.
Well, that's fantastic. We certainly appreciate you operating in that way.
Thank you.
That kind of leads me to the fact that, we've been speaking quite a bit about Journeyage, and I don't want to change the station away from that if there are pieces that we haven't gotten to yet, but you certainly have other initiatives that are worthy of conversation. I guess
let's go. Take me where you want to go.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Well, again, the word that I see when I see everything that you're involved with is really community. That you really have connection to a lot of things, and you're interested in seeing others connect to one another in ways that are meaningful. So some of the other initiatives that it looks like you're part of is how teams, smaller group teams. So obviously the Journeyage platform is sort of whole scale, operational wide, where it also looks like, so we got ETW, we've got Mind Up. Can you walk us through a little bit about, again, how you found yourself in front of those, or what was your interest in bringing them to life? And how
I'm very grateful for both of those. ETW is a strategic partner of Journeyage very early on. I've learned a lot from their methodology. And so they really do have an operating system that organizations can operate by. Journeyage, we ourselves use it, and a lot of other organizations do. And it touches really on the first thing is just, how is it that you're communicating as a team and getting the right things done, right? And that's always the question, is how do you do that also in a way that's sustainable and that you can operationalize across small teams, but also large organizations. And it really does sometimes start with that leadership team. So that has been incredibly valuable. We have software to help further those efforts, but it really is a methodology that we're implementing into organizations. And Mind Up was kind of the brainchild of that, or this the fruit of that. We saw that meetings were really the first place that there was benefit within the organizations that were applying methodology, and there weren't a lot of great tools to help them improve those meetings or how they did meetings right out of the gate. So we launched Mind Up earlier this year, and it's been fun to see the growth of that. We have thousands of users, about 4,000 users now. We launched in February, and it's been really fun to see how teams are using that, from Google all the way down to Intuit, and it could be nonprofits, it could be organizations. So it's been fun, and there's a lot of interconnectivity between all these things. And so Journeyage, ETW, we have some shared clients, but also just we see it as a way to further maximize that impact. And at the end of the day, you're right, community is where it's at. For me, Arizona is where I call home. Phoenix is a place I love, and so I want to have the opportunity to love my neighbors, and businesses are one of the ways I do that. But there are a lot of ways to apply and support. You're doing it through Conscious Capitalism Arizona, through this radio broadcast. We all have these different zones and areas, and so those are some of the ways I do it.
Love it. To dig in a little bit more on the Mind Up ETW, those are platforms. You said there's a methodology behind it. Is that a homegrown methodology, or is that a sprinkling of a whole bunch of names and influencers we've heard before throughout business lore? How did you come to that methodology?
That's a great question. Well, I mean, ultimately by practice and applying it into organizations and refining it over time. Sure, there are some frameworks that we've adopted into it. Strategy, for example, there are some pieces from that. We also, Jack Welch, when you're looking at, hey, where are we today? Where are we going? How are we going to get there? I mean, those types of things from a strategy standpoint. But the majority of it is homegrown and led by the CEO over at ETW, Lee Benson. And he's a phenomenal leader. He had done it, helped grow an aerospace company from 0 to over 500 employees, and sold that off. And so, again, lessons learned from there, but then helping a number of different, Fortune 500 to startup companies apply this. And the goal being, how do we find an operating system that works for 80 to 90% of people? And it doesn't have to be so stringent as some operating systems are. So it's been really useful. And then Mind Up is agnostic to what that methodology is that a team uses. It's just connect your Google Calendar or your Microsoft 365 calendar and start having better, more productive meetings. So that's been fun, and again, kind of more of a direct to consumer play, no methodology required.
Okay. And forgive me if I dig too far in the weeds on this. you grab the cane and hook the neck at any point. For your keeping meetings productive, that element you just fused in, that it's really just getting calendars in and getting people synced up better. But is it also help the flow of a meeting? Does it say, hey, it's been 15 minutes, you need to pass the microphone, or stand up, it's been an hour, or we've been on this? How does it?
That's a good
there's
question.
some examples. You don't have to, pull the whole curtain back, but what are some of the things we could learn from that?
Oh no, there's so much, and I mean, there's so much data out there, right? I mean, in business, we're always meeting. We're all zoomed out over the last year, right? So
true.
A lot of teams are going to asynchronous things, but there's one thing that's lost. A lot of times we reserve the space on our calendar for thinking about a problem, right? Rather than preparing in any way. Look, it could be a small thing, right? Just 5 minutes before, of just getting your brain on, what is it that we really want to accomplish? What's the agenda? What are the discussion points there? And just preparing in a way that's productive, so that instead of the conversation becoming just a status update, we've all been there. We've been in a meeting where people are just repeating something that could have been shared via email or via Slack or whatever it might be. But instead of that, hey, let's have that, and then let's solve problems together. Let's focus on the work that's necessary. So we believe by enabling that and helping people do that better and structuring those meetings more effectively, that there's a big gain in productivity, how teams are working together, how they're communicating. Going back to those meeting notes, so you don't have all these Google Docs hanging out all over the place, or Evernote, or whatever it might be, and it's structured based upon your calendar and who you talked with and all of that jazz. So it's been fun, and it's a big problem to solve. There's for sure going to be winners out there in that category, and there are already, some that have gotten some focus. But we think that meetings are a necessary part of teams, and they can be much better.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's sort of the search for the Holy Grail, right? Like we're always wanting to have these optimal meetings, whatever that means, but it's so conditional, and it's the variables that contribute to that are many. So to have tools to help build containers and drive that forward is wonderful. You also you mentioned your passion for the city of Phoenix. I know you're involved with the startup community. I want to share how you found your way to that lane of travel, and what that's done for your heart.
I think that's just scratching my own itch. I mean, if I'm a starter, I gotta help a startup community, right? So I didn't land there that intentionally. I think it was kind of an accidental, more of a stumble, but I'm really grateful for it. When I was running another startup user experience design and development agency called User 10, I don't know, this was about 8 years ago now. Had some time with some other fellow entrepreneurs in the community who said, you know what, we don't even really know what's happening in Phoenix. It's not that there's nothing happening in the startup community here. We're just not aware of it. And so we need to amplify what's already happening. We need to unify a lot of that kind of disparate ecosystem, and we need to clarify our objectives. So that was really the mission: amplify, unify, clarify, and started a community effort called YesPHX. You can visit yesphx.com to learn about that. And it was really just a hashtag. I mean, at the end of the day, it was a hashtag. And now at this point, I mean, there's been billboards, campaigns, hundreds of thousands of people tweeting that, so on and so forth. And that led to me then getting involved with Phoenix Startup Week and launching that back in 2015. And I ran that for 2 years, and then passed the baton to some others in the community. And it's been cool to see that. I think they're going on year 8 now, or event 8 coming up here soon. So it's been fun to watch that. And I just get to be a champion, right? One member of a large ecosystem. And I'm grateful for the role I've gotten to, been honored to play. But it's because we have an entire community really doing and leading that, that there's something to speak about.
For sure. Yeah, that's at the core of everything. But boy, has that blossomed into something amazing. That Startup Week is is a can't miss event on most business calendars. So that's really cool. We appreciate all of your work on that.
It was fun. I don't talk much about the genesis of it, but I will say this. I mean, we had 3 months to plan that very first one. So it was just such a MVP duct tape it together. We had 40 people in the room, just okay, so one crew was going to manage the day in Phoenix, another was doing Scottsdale, another was doing, and we had these different hubs all over. And it was amazing to see people pull together. No real budget. I mean, we had, a starting budget, but I mean, it was just fun.
Let's
and
see what we can do.
We did it because we wanted it, right? It wasn't because anyone else necessarily said you have to do this. So it was really neat, and I've loved watching that continue to grow.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, clearly there was a space for it, because it's become quite the landmark. Let's see. One other entity that I really am curious about is the Be Do Go You.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, I told
That's
you.
brand new. You were there.
I went fishing, my friend.
You talk about starting. It's okay. This is like a passion project more than anything.
Okay.
For me. It's total side gig. No real business aspirations or anything along those lines, other than just helping people identify that purpose. Again, knowing who they are is really that matters to me a great deal. I think a lot of people are so focused on trying to find even a purpose, right? In some way. But if you don't know who you are, if you don't know why you're waking up every morning, how is it that you're going to figure that out? And a lot of people are tying their purpose to their business aspirations. And frankly, as much as I love Journeyage, as much as I've enjoyed doing Phoenix Startup Week and the SPHX and Mind Up, E12, all these things, that at the end of the day, I'm not going to be doing those when I'm 90 years old, right? So
those are things you do, not things you are.
That's right. So we have to know, why is it I'm waking up every day? And that has to be, again, a horizon to be pursued. So for me, I live to love radically. And really that's the core, right? Loving radically, investing my whole inheritance as a shepherd and starter. And so that's really the core of who I am. That's not going to change. It's not tied to any one organization. And I just want to help other people figure out what that is for them. So it's been fun. I've run through a few beta tests. It's really something I intend to automate when I have the time, but it's really content and exercises to help people investigate, discover, and then truly apply and understand their own purpose in life.
That's so fantastic and so important. Again, within Conscious Capitalism, we talk about how important it is for a business to be very clear on what its purpose is, as a rallying cry for the people that want to be part of that mission and serving it. But you raise a great point. I mean, it seems especially now that there's a lot of folks that just kind of show up. That's great. I'm drawn to that, but I don't know why, and I don't know what's in my heart. So there's plenty of room for that too. That's good stuff.
Well, like I said, real passion project. So I'm sure over coffee or whiskey or something, we'll be able to dive into that. And again, it's it's the reason it's called Be Do Go You. I mean, frankly, I got the domain, right, as a starter. That's one of the first things. But not just the domain. It's really that your being plus your doing plus where you're going equals you. It's not just one aspect of this. It's you're a whole. You're a complex whole, and we try and really segment these pieces of ourselves rather than integrating them all. And so I think it's really important to understand the whole. And that is very, very interesting to me. And I hope to get to help more in that vein over time.
I like that. That's well said. I'm going to change the channel again because for anybody that finds this show, in the show notes is a link to Jonathan's webpage. And I have several compliments about this. The first is, I felt inspired when I was perusing your information personally, because I've always been the guy that's, we talked earlier that I'm a scaler, but I'm scaled my interests on what I want to scale, maneuver through the seasons of my life and just what I get exposure to and see and want to be part of. contrary to sort of the 10,000 hours of mastery. And if you're an accountant,
Right.
you're going to be an accountant and you're going to dig in and be the best accountant you can possibly be, where you have given me permission to give myself that it's okay to have a fabric or a quilt with lots of different fabrics cut in.
Oh yeah.
Or the highway is heading in the direction, but there's multiple lanes that we can swerve in and out of. And you do that very artfully. So kudos to you on that. You also made a little tongue-in-cheek comment that someday when I have time, I'm going to automate this and make it a tool. I'm assuming you're going with the adage, I'll sleep when I'm old, because I don't see a lot of rest in your schedule with everything you're part of.
I think though, to your point there, I mean, I don't require as much sleep as perhaps everyone, but I do really disconnect and try and stay as present as possible. So I think that's not something I've always been good at, but I think over the last 3 or 4 years, I got frankly pretty undone and broken because I was just really caught up in that mentality, that mindset of just going, and rest has become a much more integral part of my life and in a lot of fashions. And I think rest is more encompassing than just sleep, but sleep is a part of it for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so you put some little fun facts, and I want to dig into a couple of these if we can. Ooh. So you throw some numbers out there. I'm curious, the first one, 55 tools you use to improve and simplify your life. Now, that's a very specific number. You laid them out on the kitchen table one day and inventoried them. Are these are your books? These are pearls of wisdom. Give me some examples of what's in that tool bench of yours, Mr. 55 tools.
So, oh man, there are so many. Well, again, my website, I'm very grateful that you were inspired by the website. And I loved how you put that idea of like different lanes to swerve in and out of and different interests. And we all have them, right? It's sure. Silly to think like, my website is just like telling what I've done professionally. I mean, that would be a waste of internet space. It's almost like this little a fun project for me to just kind of tinker. And I view it as that. It's like my laboratory to really get almost like an autobiography in a website form on the page. And so I even have a whole section on the website of, recommendations. And I do have my 55 tools, and this is just one of my life hacks, right? I mean, if we find the right tools for us, it can drastically improve your life. It's not the only thing, but it's definitely one of the things. So I have everyday tools, productivity, communication, design and web, media, finance, and I do have like a top 10. So I'd say my real kind of like trifecta tools are Dropbox, LastPass, and privacy. And those three are just game changers all paired together. And it came from me reading a book about the organized mind and how our brains really organize information. And the more that we have like just a common place for something, it frees up all this background space, the subconscious, unconscious processing that our mind is doing when we don't have to remember where we set our keys, or more realistically, what our passport number is, or where our, name it, right? Having all of that in a single and safe place. So those three things for me, privacy, LastPass, and Dropbox are big helps in that effort.
Those are great suggestions. You talk about your ambition to write 12 books. 12 is the number you picked. You've got one. Is it in the hopper? Is it off the presses? Where's book number one at? And it's timeline?
Book number one is publishing deal, manuscript done. Not a published date yet, but marketing activities and some other ththings that are in the hopper for that. So
awesome. That's exciting. What is the topic you're pursuing with that book?
I even on the website, I say, I hope everyone will judge the book by its cover. I mean, because I'm a design guy. I mean, we have to judge this book by its cover. But the name of the book is Do Nothing, The Simple Secrets of Jesus to Accomplish Anything. So it has, on the cover, though, it says hustle, crossed out, try harder, crossed out, earn it, crossed out. And I do think that, you brought up rest, and that's the book I wrote while there was a lot of kind of rest and learning how to do that and incorporate that into all facets of my life. So I'm grateful for those lessons.
That's fantastic that you've been able to weave that in and share that wisdom. And why 12? Why did you arrive at 12 as your target number?
I got 12 that I have to write. I mean, hopefully there's more. I actually even have the titles on it. If anyone wants to go see my future bibliography, it's all there. I just need the time to get to it.
Got to build the bridge to it. I get it.
That's right. Look, I got the bucket list, and that's just one of the things on the bucket list. I got to do it.
That's fantastic.
I do think this about books. There's no better medium today that makes such a personal, direct impact on people long after you're gone. Now, I'm not saying, video and movies and music, that there's no impact to be made, but the way to really convey thought and leave an impression and help people implement something that's different. And again, I'm a film nerd. Like I love movies. At the end of the day, though, I think there's no better medium than books, and it's been around forever. I'm still being impacted by people that are long dead because of the words that they wrote down on the page. And so I think everyone's got at least one book in them. And I'm sure there's more in most people if they were willing to take the time to really lay that wisdom down on the page and share it generation after generation.
I think you're right. Well, as we get to Gavin here, the time always rolls by quickly. Is there any parting thoughts? What's coming next? Anything that I didn't do a good job of unearthing that we need to share with the listeners?
Well, you unearthed a lot, and like I said, I mean, if you went around the pink labyrinthian corners of my website, I'm sure you got more on me than most people have. But no, I would just say I'm available. I mean, anyone that's interested also in connecting, they can visit jonathancottrell.com. But all my contact info is there, and you can schedule meetings with me. I'm here to serve in whatever way or capacity I can. And Jeremy, it's been real pleasure, and I'm looking forward to spending some time with you face to face, not just via the Zoom as well.
Likewise, cannot express my appreciation enough for your time on this conversation, for everything you're doing for the business community at large, for Conscious Capitalism. We're glad you found your way to that group of folks.
Likewise.
We do have a couple of announcements for the world to know. This Wednesday, we have our monthly installment of a Conscious Business Chat that happens at noon. You can register at our website, ccarizona.org. That's just a place where you can jump in and casually talk about things that some places, Jonathan shared the word love and community and caring, and that's not always topics that circulate in every office environment. So this is a place where you can have those dialogues and help us all collaboratively explore how we can level up our organizations in our pursuit of elevating humanity. And then also want to mention that next Wednesday, again, a lunch initiative starts part of our Insight to Action programming. Conscious Capitalism has 4 key tenets, one of which is stakeholder integration. So we're going to do a deep dive on what that means, and then more importantly, build cohorts so that we can all really build that into the practice of what we do every day at work. So again, Jonathan, thank you so much to your team at Journeyage. Thank you for everything they're doing for our community. To everybody who jumped in to eavesdrop on this conversation, we sure appreciate you doing so. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeremy. Really appreciate it.
Have a great one.
Thank you for listening to People in Profit, where we showcase the businesses that are elevating humanity through their work right here in Arizona. Learn more about us at ccarizona.org.